Hi, I'm Chuck Brinkman, and this is the 6th video in the Steps to Homeownership series. Up to this point, we have discussed whether you should rent or buy, because there are advantages and disadvantages to each, making sure that your credit is up to snuff, that you can afford the house of your dreams, that you know that you're in a good location and how to pick that location. And the last one was on picking the house and some things to look for and to be cautious of when picking a house. So now we're going to assume that you've got the house of your dreams, that the left side of your brain has said, way to go, and the right side of your brain says, I love it too. And now all you've got to do is convince the current owner of that house that he or she wants to give it to you for bottom dollar and in perfect condition. And the first step in that process is called the contract to buy, or the offer. Now I've subtitled that as the proposal, because in my mind, the section of homeownership and purchasing a home that we're going through now has some analogies that are similar to getting married. One of the first steps in getting married is you look for the right spouse. And some of the steps I mentioned earlier would apply, and we could have fun going through each of them and talking about how the steps to buying a house are similar to the steps to asking somebody to marry you and choosing them as a mate. However, this particular step is the proposal. This is where in the marriage scenario you fall down on your knees and you produce a ring and you pledge fidelity and love in sickness and in health for the rest of your life to the girl or guy of your dreams, and that person then has a decision to make. They can accept your offer, they can counter your offer, tell you to go out and get a better ring, or they can turn you down and wait for a better offer, or put you on hold while they wait for a better offer, which is actually, from a legal perspective, is like saying no. Now let's talk about the legal perspective, because I want to make it really clear that I am not a lawyer. I say that on advice of my lawyers who billed me to say it, and even though I have paid so much money to lawyers over the years that I ought to have an honorary law degree, unfortunately it doesn't work that way. So I'm telling you that I'm not a lawyer because I don't want you to think that all this legal stuff is really legal advice and go out and write a contract, get sued, hire your own lawyer who then sues me, and I have to pay my lawyer more money to tell your lawyer that I told you that I was not a lawyer. And I know what my lawyer would say, and that is not just to tell you that I'm not a lawyer, but to put it in print. So if you look right here, it carefully says I am not a lawyer. So hopefully we've got that taken care of. However, we do have to talk about the contract, and that contract will be a legal document, which means it's binding, which means that once you sign it, it's not like a cootie catcher or a paper airplane that you can just throw away. It has consequences. So you need to think through what you're offering and what you are asking with regard to purchasing this house. So to help you do that, we're going to categorize the things that are part of a contract. And we're going to do it in a who, what, where, when, why, how much, why or why not, and what else kind of discussion. So the first thing that a contract is going to say is who. Who are we talking about? Well, you might say, Chuck, that's pretty obvious. We're talking about me. Well, that's true. You're the buyer in this case. But we're also talking about a seller. And we want to know who the buyer really is. Is it you? Is it you and your spouse? Is it some company you've set up? Is it you and your parents or your kids? Who's going to buy this house and how are they going to hold title? And that whole discussion on title is one you need to have with your attorney. We're definitely not going there, or all the mea culpas in the world aren't going to convince you that I'm not giving legal advice, because that really is a legal discussion, but it's an important one. You need to think about, are you taking title or ownership in this house in your name or with your spouse? And even if you're taking it with your spouse, how are you doing it? Are you doing it tenants in common, joint tenants with rights of survivorship? What are you doing? And that's a discussion to have with a lawyer, so you too can enjoy paying some legal fees. But the who section is who's buying and who's selling. It also has to do with, and you're going to put this in your contract, who's lending the money? Who's closing the loan? Where is it going to be closed? Where is this sale, this consummation of this transaction going to happen? Typically it's in an attorney or a closing agent's office, and you're going to name that in the contract. And then finally, who gets paid? Were there real estate agents in this transaction, or was it done directly between a buyer and a seller? So that's some of the who's. There's probably a couple of more that live in Whoville with this contract. And the second is what? Well, what are we talking about? What's being sold and what's being purchased? Well, a house. No kidding, right? Well, yes, but what is a house? I mean, it's obviously the bricks and the mortar and the sheetrock and the wires that are in the walls, but is it that chandelier that's so beautiful? Is it that $2,000 stainless steel refrigerator? Well, it only is if you write it in the contract. So you want to make sure that you write very clearly what you want. Where? Well, there's the where, that is, where is this house located? You want to write that in so you make sure that the seller sells you the house you think you're getting. But it's also the where is the closing going to take place? Where are we going to consummate this deal? We talked about who, what attorney's going to do it, but where's their office? You want to make sure that everybody shows up for the closing. You would think that having done a couple of hundred of these, I would know that. Not that long ago, I had a closing come, and I realized between the attorney, myself, who was dealing directly with the buyer, and the loan officer that we all showed up for the closing, and all of us forgot to invite the buyer. So that's bad. We don't want to do that. So you want to make sure you know where it's going to close, and of course when. When is the closing going to take place? But it's not just when is it going to take place, which is typically 20 to 45 days after you sign the contract, but it's also when do you have to have your inspection done in order for that to be a stopping point for the contract. See, the inspection is kind of a contingency. It's your chance to go, whoa, just kidding, don't really like the house. But you only have certain dates that you can do that because the seller doesn't want to take their house off the market forever. Also, when does the termite and moisture have to be done? That's another when that comes into play in this process. The next topic is how much. Well, how much is not just what's the price you're going to pay for the house. How much is how much are you going to put down as a deposit to show, or earnest money with what they call it, to show that you're serious. How much is the cost of the house total? How much down payment are you going to bring, and how much is the lender going to provide? And then finally, how much closing cost assistance are you going to ask for from the seller? So those are some of the how much things that'll be in your contract. And then I put why or why not. And I put why or why not because it sounded better than just why not. But this is really a why not discussion. Why not close this transaction? What could happen that could make it so that you get a free get out of jail pass so that you don't have to finish this deal? Well, that's going to be written in the contract. One of the things might be that a home inspection fails. The inspector comes back and goes, hey, I've got good news and I've got bad news. Good news is you've got a house of rock. Bad news is it's on a foundation of sand and it's sinking. And you go to the seller and say, hey, just kidding, don't want to buy that house. That gets you out. Another reason that you might not close this sale is because the title might not be clear. If you think you're buying, that goes back to who. If you think you're buying from Joe, but Joe doesn't really own the house, well, that's going to be a problem because Joe's not going to be able to give you clear title and you wouldn't be able to get clear title, give it to someone else. So that could be a why not. And you want to make sure that you have those written in your contracts. And then finally, I've put down what else. What's the next, what else do you want? I mean, do you want the yard professionally landscaped? Do you want the seller to install a pool? Do you want them to fight for peace in the Middle East? What do you want? This is your chance to write it down and ask for it. Doesn't mean they're going to say yes, but all they can do is say no. So the contract is a proposal. It's you getting down on your knee, bringing out the ring, and if this is about the size of the ring, really, here's what I'm offering. Besides my love and fidelity, it's this, and I want you to accept that for your house. And we'll talk in the next session about if the seller accepts your offer, what do you do then? Well, now you got to go get a loan. How are you going to pay for this wedding that's coming up? And we'll see you in that video.